So, I hear you can tell a lot about a person by the types of books they read. So, let's go through some of my all time favorites. First off, we have The Purpose Driven Life. Now, I don't know if you have come across this book, but it answers the question about what you're on earth for, it answers a lot about purpose on earth, what to live for. It is talks about faith in a way that is relatable and direct and in a very understandable way, and all parts of it, from your identity, building relationship with God, service, and so on and so forth. I think it covers around 40 days, so I think it's a good guide for when you're just trying to deepen your relationship with God and trying to understand all the facets of faith. It does this in a very digestible form, so I really love it. Up next is Apostle's Sister. Not this particular book. The writer of this book is Angela Hunt, and I really love her stories. So, this genre is biblical fiction. Essentially, they take a story from the Bible and then adding different layers and making it fictional. But what I do really love about it is that a lot of research goes into it. They do a lot of research into the context. What was the life like? What was the society in Rome, in Jerusalem, in Judea at that point? So we get a bit of context. And then they add in biblical characters, the characters we know. Some stories we know, other stories, well, they're not actually real. But what I do love about it is it's a fun way to read fiction, something lighthearted, but it's still reminding you about God, as well as allowing you to really understand the context of these biblical characters, what they were going through, what was the norm and what wasn't. So when I am reading the Bible, I'm just like, oh, this happened because it packs a lot. Another of my fave is I Dared to Call Him Father. It is by Bilquis Shear. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Written alongside Richard Schneider. So this is an account of a prominent Muslim woman in South Asia who arrived at a crossroads of life, and then she converted, and it was a really big deal. It wasn't just like, oh, I chose. It was really huge. Her family deserted her. She was the matriarch, so she was the richest, think the queen of like an area. Islam was the norm, and then she switched. She gave her life completely to God. And at first, I was just like, oh, it's just going to be a wonderful story. I'm already a Christian. I believe what. But her process to finding God, at first, she was questioning. She had some doubts, some questions, which I feel like for a lot of Christians, we go through questioning the existence of God and what is real and what is not. So it was very connecting in that point of view, but also seeing the point of view of somebody that was not a Christian or didn't have a Christian background find Christ was also very tremendous, and how she was very passionate about spreading the gospel after that was also very inspiring as well. So I really loved the story. I cried during several points of it. It was a gift. I really appreciate the person that gifted me this. The story is definitely gonna stick with me. It also makes you understand the point of view of people from another religion without, sometimes I feel like when we talk, it can get a bit confrontational, but you get an idea of their thought process and how they think without that. Another one, God Will Make a Way by Don Moyne. This is his biography, life story type thing, a memoir of his life story and how he got into serving and creating music and stuff. For me, at the time I read this was a real big push for me to serve with purpose, serve with clarity, but also create with purpose. He went through a lot of ups and downs before finding music and even creating music and writing it and even it becoming so popular and impactful. So it was really a strong encouragement for me in terms of service and just living a life for God wholeheartedly throughout, completely, because he had to completely give his entire life. And he used to work in business. He had a good job, guys, before he switched to music. And if making it out there as an artist is really rough, but God made a way. Now we're on to a bit more of Black culture, about ethnic books. But what do those books tell you about me? Now onto another section, Homegoing by Ya Gyasi. Gyasi is a Ghanaian, and the book actually started and ended in Ghana. You have to read it to understand it, but essentially it's different. It's a compilation of different stories in one. If someone asks me for one book recommendation that explains the Black historic experience from both sides of the continent, Africa and also North America, this side of the world, this would be the book I would recommend. It perfectly summarizes this. Now, as a Nigerian and a Jamaican, when I was in Nigeria, I think I knew a little about colonial history, not that much. When I went to Jamaica, I knew a lot about like, how people would come from the continent, people were taken from the continent of Africa and brought to this part of the world and caused to, suffer the whole process of slavery and the impact. But for me, I had to make the effort to really reconcile both stories. A lot of people only have one of the stories. So a lot of Africans always think of, colonizers in terms of like just colonization. And sometimes people are very hurt. They say hurtful things to other people on the other side of the spectrum of the black hatred, essentially racist actions. This book does a great job in tying everything from both sides, but also generational. So she brings it back into like our times and the sufferings and stuff. And some of the struggles that we deal with now are linked to things in the past. And she just ties it in so beautifully. It is heart wrenching, so you may or may not cry depending on your emotional bandwidth. Very good. I read Things Fall Apart in my Jamaican high school, Arrow of God, No Longer at Ease, and there's another one. I read them during COVID, I think 2 days. There was a country, a personal history of Biafra. So before this book, I thought Biafra was like a nickname for a state in Nigeria or something. I didn't know it was like a country that wanted to secede from Nigeria as a whole, and so he gave the personal history. So it's essentially a history story about like one of the greatest civil wars in Nigeria. They don't teach you this in school. So this was like into the politics and things that go around it. It was a way for me to just connect to Nigerian stories and Nigerian roots. And Chinua Achebe is an amazing writer. These books also, some are set during colonial time, like early entry, and even when they left. Very good, as you can see, full of tabs. I love him. Literally one of my favorite writers on this earth. It will bring me to Chimamanda as well, which is kind of his prodigy, you would say. I love horror stories. I seem not to have one on hand right now, but I've read a lot of it. Half of a Yellow Sun, loved Americana because it talked about like person migrating to another country, and when I read it, I was also just coming to like, Canada. I just love her writing, how relatable she is and still impactful. Got a few more to run through. And fifth season by N.K. Jemisin. I'm just gonna introduce this one as well. Children of Virtue and Vengeance by Tomi Adeyemi. Both of them are book series. This is the second in the 3 book series. The first one is Children of Blood and Bones, and the last one is Children of Anguish and Anarchy. The names are gory. The story too, kind of. It's not that bad, I promise. The 5th season, I think this is the first book in a 3 book series as well. These are books written by Black people sharing Black stories in a way that isn't the norm. They're all fiction. So if you're into sci-fi, all this type of like, gonna love this. I really love this for that. And it also talks about social issue. This book touched on climate change and stuff. So there's a lot of like commentary that is heavy in it. Cool. I just love it for the concept because we don't have to be restricted to certain types of like story. Use of writing, we can expand our minds into creativity. It's historical, mythological, essentially. So you hear tribes like here Orisha. There's a lot of like Yoruba in it, but it's nothing like the real life. There's a lot of like Nigeria. There's Zaria, Ibadan. This is like map of the land and stuff. But then there's just like in the storyline, the values of family, of culture, of tradition, and just living together. So also power tussle. There's like royalty, commoners and stuff. It's just so good. It's a good story. I need to complete the third in the series. There's a movie coming out about it, so that's exciting. But these are just to represent my African rom-com, black writers rom-com stories, cozy fiction books. So His Only Wife, Yinka, Where's Your Husband? This is hilarious in a fun way. This was hilarious up to a point, and then later it became very like, yeah, emotions. It's so funny, but like there was a period where I was just like, I want to read books by black writers, fiction or otherwise. I just want to read black writers. So that's how we ended up loading with this, and many of those were like fun reads. Mountain Is You. This book is good. I did have to stop reading it halfway because it was very heavy. It was at this moment that I decided to just take my time with self-help books because I want to really gain utmost value from it. So yeah, it's gonna take my time reading them essentially. Do love self-help books. There was one about the decade, forgetting the name right now, but turning decade, like take charge of your 20s. I love that book. Power of Habit, also love that book. And yeah, other like sub books, that's my genre. Love This Girl, Brianna Weiss, James Clear, love them, love going through them, love taking them. But I just made a conscious decision of taking them in bite-sized doses. This is Day One by Drew Dudley. I would say this is also a kind of personal introduction to self-improvement, personal growth stuff. This is a book on leadership. I do have many notes around. I did like how he broke it down. It's just for me it was like I needed to take myself serious. And then just in turn, all the different tips and other things were things that tied into personal growth and development. So this was the kind in the book form at least. And yeah, things that causes you to build a culture of courage, to push boundaries within yourself, to remove shyness and fear. He put it in a very practical way that you can take action on. So I really, really love this. Last but not the least, God is My CEO. This is for you if you're like a person who is conscious of God's providence over your life. You want to be successful, you want to be ambitious, you want to be disciplined, but you don't want to get carried away by chasing money. So you've got this things, and there were several like persons that are successful in the world at large. They make commentaries, they make suggestions in this book, so it's like packed. God is My CEO by Larry Gillian. So really love it. There are lots more books. Let me know if you want some more faith biblical fiction recommendation, just some more reads. But I do need you guys to tell me in the comments below if you watched up to this point. What did these books tell you about me? That's one. Two, also, what would be in your life if you had to create like a list to suggest to ever to read? What books would go on there? All right, let me know. But until next time, never stop curating your best life. Bye.